Has anybody got anything to tell? It's been such a dismal day, and I'm really dying for some amusement.
I had a queer time with Aunt today, and as I got the better of it, I'll tell you about it. I was reading aloud to Aunt from that everlasting Belsham and droning away as I always do, so she soon drops off. And then I take out some nice book and read like fury till she wakes up. I actually made myself sleepy, and before she began to nod, I gave such a gape that she asked me,
What do you mean by opening your mouth wide enough to take the whole book in at once?
Then she gave me a long lecture on my sins and told me to sit and think them over while she just lost herself for a moment. She never finds herself very soon, so the minute her cap began to bob, I whipped the Vicar of Wakefield out of my pocket and read away, with one eye on him and one on Aunt. I just got to where they all tumbled into the water when I forgot and laughed out loud. Aunt woke up and, being more good-natured after her nap, told me to read a bit and show what frivolous work I preferred to the worthy and instructive Belsham. I did my very best, and she liked it, though she only said,
I don't understand what it's all about. Go back and begin it, child.
Back I went and made the primroses as interesting as ever I could. Once I was wicked enough to stop in a thrilling place and said meekly, I'm afraid it tires you, ma'am. Shan't I stop now? She caught up her knitting, which had dropped out of her hands, gave a sharp look through her specs, and said in her short way,
Finish the chapter and don't be impertinent, child.
Did she own she liked it?
Oh, bless you, no. But she let old Belsham rest, and when I ran back after my gloves this afternoon, there she was, so hard at the vicar that she didn't hear me laugh as I danced a jig in the hall because of the good time coming. What a pleasant life she might have if only she chose. I don't envy her much, in spite of her money, for after all, rich people have about as many worries as poor ones, I think.
That reminds me that I've got something to tell. It isn't funny, like Joe's story, but I thought about it a good deal as I came home. At the King's today, I found everybody in a flurry, and one of the children said that her oldest brother had done something dreadful, and that Papa had sent him away. I heard Mrs. King crying and Mr. King talking very loud, and Grace and Ellen turned away their faces when they passed me, so I shouldn't see how red and swollen their eyes were. I didn't ask any questions, of course, but I felt so sorry for them. I was rather glad I hadn't any wild brothers to do wicked things and disgrace the family.
I think being disgraced in school is a great deal trying than anything bad boys can do. Susie Perkins came to school today with a lovely red carnelian ring. I wanted it dreadfully and wished I was her. Well, she drew a picture of Mr. Davis with a monstrous nose and a hump, and words, Young ladies, my eye is upon you, coming out of his mouth in a balloon thing. We were laughing over it when all of a sudden his eye was on us, and he ordered Susie to bring up her slate. She was paralyzed with fright, but she went, and oh, what do you think he did? He took her by the ear, and led her to the recitation platform and made her stand there half an hour, holding the slate so everyone could see.
Didn't the girls laugh at the picture?
Laugh? Not one. They sat still as mice, and Susie cried quarts. I didn't envy her then, for I felt that millions of carnelian rings wouldn't have made me happy after that. I never should have gotten over such an agonizing mortification.
I saw something I liked this morning, and I meant to tell it at dinner, but I forgot. When I went to get oysters for Hannah, Mr. Lawrence was in the fish shop, but he didn't see me, for I kept behind the fish barrel, and he was busy with Mr. Cutter. A poor woman came in with a pail and a mop and asked Mr. Cutter if he would let her do some scrubbing for a bit of fish, because she hadn't any dinner for her children and had been disappointed of a day's work. Mr. Cutter was in a hurry and said no rather crossly, so she was going away when Mr. Lawrence hooked up a big fish with the crooked end of his cane and held it out to her. She was so glad and surprised she took it right into her arms and thanked him over and over. He told her to go along and cook it, and she hurried off so happy. Wasn't it good of him? Oh, she did look so funny, hugging the big slippery fish and yelling blessings at Mr. Lawrence.
What about you, Marmee?
Well, as I sat cutting out blue flannel jackets today at the Soldiers' Aid Societies, I felt very anxious about Father. It was not a wise thing to do, but I kept on worrying till an old man came in with an order for some clothes, He sat down near me and I began to talk to him, for he looked poor and tired and anxious. Have you sons in the army? I asked.
Yes, ma'am, I had 4, but 2 were killed. One is a prisoner, and I'm going to the other, who is very sick in a Washington hospital.
You have done a great deal for your country, sir.
Not a mite more than I ought, ma'am. I'd go myself if I was any use. As I ain't, I give my boys, and I give 'em free.
He spoke so cheerfully, looked so sincere, and seemed so glad to give his all that I was ashamed of myself. I'd given 1 man and thought it too much, while he gave 4 without grudging them. I had all my girls to comfort me at home, and his last son was waiting miles away to say goodbye to him, perhaps. I felt so rich, so happy thinking of my blessings, that I made him a nice bundle, gave him some money, and thanked him heartily for the lesson he had taught me.
Tell another story, Mother, one with a moral to it, like this. I like to think about them afterward if they are real and not too preachy.
Once upon a time, there were 4 girls who had enough to eat and drink and wear, a good many comforts and pleasures, kind friends and parents who loved them dearly, and yet they were not contented. These girls were anxious to be good and made many excellent resolutions, but they were constantly saying, if only we had this, or if we could only do that, quite forgetting how much they already had and how many things they actually could do. So they asked an old woman what spell they could use to make them happy. And she said, when you feel discontented, think over your blessings and be grateful. Being sensible girls, they decided to try her advice and soon were surprised to see how well off they were. One discovered that money couldn't keep shame and sorrow out of rich people's houses. Another, that though she was poor, she was a great deal happier with her youth, health, and good spirits than a certain fretful, feeble old lady who couldn't enjoy her comforts. A third, that disagreeable as it was to help get dinner, it was harder still to go begging for it. And the fourth, that even carnelian rings were not so valuable as good behavior. So they agreed to stop complaining, to enjoy the blessings already possessed, and try to deserve them, lest they should be taken away entirely instead of increased. And I believe they were never disappointed or sorry that they took the old woman's advice.
Now, Marmee, that is very cunning of you to turn our own stories against us and give us a sermon instead of a romance.
I like that kind of sermon. It's the sort Father used to tell us.
I don't complain near as much as the others do, and I shall be more careful than ever now, for I've had warning from Susie's downfall.
We needed that lesson, and we won't forget it.